Hello, thank you for joining us. This is our Organizing Your Workflow Case Statuses webinar. I'm Lou with Trackops. Today we're going to talk about the basic concepts of case statuses, how to create them, and how you can integrate them into your workflow. Today's presentation should take about 10 minutes or so. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them into the GoToMeeting chat box, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the presentation. So let's go ahead and hop on in and take a look. Great, so our case statuses, they live on the Settings tab, and we'll go back there real quick, and then we'll just see that they live under the Cases section, under Case Statuses. So great, so let's talk about case statuses for a second. Case statuses here at Trackops, we refer to them as your milestones for your case, or it's life cycle. It's the process through which the case goes, from beginning to end, and there's particular steps along the way that need to be taken in order for it to progress to the inevitable closing of the case. So there's a distinct beginning, and there's a distinct end, and there's very particular steps along the way that need to be taken in order for the case to be completed. So this is a good time for you to look at your workflow to see what steps you actually take for your case to be completed. What needs to happen before each particular status can be completed, and you can move that status to the next part of the investigation. A good way to think about this is to imagine a time before the internet, before we could share virtual information and we'd have actual physical documents to share with each other in the office. We would have to hand somebody at each stage the folder so that they can work on the case. So as it progressed, they would do their work, then they would move it to the next stage, move it to the next stage, move it to the next stage until the case is eventually complete. That's the same core concept behind case statuses. So let's kind of talk through that for a second. With that idea in mind, that each case status point is a receptacle, it is a container for the case, and it really cannot move from one point to the next until that work is done. You really should not be working two separate case statuses at the same time on a given case. You really should finish one point before it moves on to the next, and that again is the idea behind case statuses. So let's say a new case comes in and it's given to the administrator, the office administrator, who vets all that information. They get that information, they make sure that it's correct, and then they move it to the pending assignment as they hand it to the case manager. The case manager sees that there's a pending assignment, and they can say, all right, let me review this information to find the best investigator for the job. They find the best investigator for the job, they assign it, then they can move it from the pending assignment case status to the open and working status. Now at this point in time, the investigator now has the case. They work the case. They get all their evidence. They do their surveillance, their research, their interviews. They then say, all right, the investigation is complete. They then can move the case status. They can now move the case from open and working to investigation complete. Now during this stage, the report is drafted and it's submitted to the case manager. Now we have the invoice is sent out after that point, and then it's closed once all the reports have been delivered to the client. Now I can see here that there's a bit of a disconnect between the investigation being complete and it being invoiced. There's an important step I'm missing here, and this is a good example of troubleshooting your workflow. I need to have a point in time where I confirm that this draft report has been proofed and it actually has been delivered. So what I can do is I can create a new case status to represent that step, that basket, that that receptacle for the case to exist in before it becomes invoiced. So I've identified that important step. I'm going to create a new case status by clicking the new case status button. I can go ahead and name this just something like proofed and delivered. I can choose my color of my desire. Of course, I can change this later. That looks good. I want it to rank below the investigation complete step and before the invoiced step. A quick description says, draft report has been proofed and finalized and then delivered. The next thing we're going to want to take a look at for our case status is the monitor due date option. This is important if we've not yet delivered all the information to the client, that we've not given them our final report. And that's what this particular status confirms, is that the report's been delivered, it's been proofed and delivered, so we can uncheck that. So that way we'll no longer monitor the case due date for this particular case, because we've satisfied the due date, hopefully, at that point. The set as active point is going to assume that new information is still coming in. So at this point, no new information is coming in at this case status, so we're going to want to uncheck that. We're going to want to uncheck that. And finally, we can set this stage or this case status as being reopenable for the case in the event that you have to reopen the case. If you do reopen a case, obviously it uses all the information that you've put into this case and creates a new iteration. But we want to go ahead and set this as reopenable. So let's go ahead and save that case status. Oh, I noticed I have two very similar colored case statuses. I'm going to hop back. We're going to change that to there. There we go. That looks much better. So no, great. I have that missing step on my workflow that I can go ahead and check off my list, make sure that the case goes through that particular point in order for it to then be invoiced, and then eventually we can close the case and get our check and get paid for the work that we've done. Let's go ahead and take a look at this in action. Let's go ahead and hop onto a recent case. And how do we move a case status from one point to the next? Well, really, it's easy, and assuming that you have the permission to do so, you can go ahead and click Next, select the case status that needs to be set. All right, now we're saying in this example that we are now ready to have our case status proofed, to have the report for the case to be proofed and delivered. We can click Change Status, confirm that change. Great, and now that status has been changed. A good way to keep track of your case statuses is to use the widget on your dashboard, and at a glance you can see where the cases where your cases are in your workflow. So if you're someone who's working an investigation, you would pay attention to this particular case status. If you were the person to confirm the report's been proofed and delivered, you would pay attention to this. If you're the person who is ready to invoice the cases, you would look at this, and you can see the number of cases in each status. So that's kind of your pulse of your case status is this particular widget. That is the basic ideas behind case statuses. Go ahead and let us know if you have any questions. I don't see any questions as of yet, but we'll give it a second. If after this presentation you have some questions regarding case statuses or anything really, feel free to send us a ticket to support@trackops.com, and we'll be happy to answer your question very quickly. I don't see any questions today. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. We hope to see you again soon. As always, give us a call or send us an email if you have any feedback or any questions. Take care, everybody.